we go. See, baby. Oh, Dan, can you get our photo?
Yeah. Do you have your phone?
Yeah.
Here's on my phone.
All right. You gonna do it right?
All right, well, good job.
Can we take our headphones off?
Yeah.
No, you gotta wear them.
It doesn't matter. Take your headphones off.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
All right. All right.
All right, okay. I'll get it on.
Okay.
I'll discuss it later.
All right.
All right, love you too. She's so excited, Jared. That's awesome.
We have to check it because see, Danny cuts heads off. Huh?
If she does it, you know,
I love it. You did it beautifully.
There you go.
Well,
I got her arm around you.
you did, sweetheart.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, my manager hates me right now because I accidentally closed the door. So she had to reopen it, and I was like, oh. But
Yeah, that's a pain in the butt.
yeah, it really is. Because it's not even the end of the day yet.
Hey, guys out there. Just want to make it public. And we'll be on YouTube, Gino?
yeah, you're on YouTube too.
All right, guys, we're on YouTube, okay?
Okie doke.
Also. So,
So we have to watch our language, is what you're saying.
so at this moment now, no cussing. You haven't cussed anyway. We got to worry about the guy.
Lizard, nah. Never worry when Lizard's around.
Never.
Never. Lizard would never do anything like that.
Lizard's been good. Lizard's been good.
Yeah.
All right, so let's make it public. Edit privacy. Okay, guys. Hey, everybody. Video, no sound.
You have no sound?
That's what it says.
You have sound.
All right.
We just disappeared. There we
No,
are.
no, it's me. I'm doing that. I'm doing that.
All right then, G.
All
Don't
right.
worry.
No worries.
No worries, baby.
No worries, baby.
I'll tell you when the phone call comes.
So, guys, look at the camera.
Okay.
Because I'm going to try and do something here. I don't know if it'll work, but we're going to try. So, smile at the camera. As soon as he gets that off of there.
I'm sorry.
Ready?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it worked, but we'll try. I like to take screenshots like
Ah.
of us in action, and then I can put that on the
In
page
action
too.
meaning we're staring at the camera. It's action.
Action packed, huh?
Stare at the camera. We're getting an action shot
I
now.
have to entertain all my friends out there. Listen, when I don't do certain things, they all want to know why.
Okay.
Terry Collins is in the house. Hey, Robert Santa. So. Damaged goods, guys. Terry Collins. Only if you're damaged, watch his show, right, baby? Hey, Kathy. Ray. So many people already. Yay. The show will start at 5-ish. But we like making fun of everybody early. Lizard,
Yes.
make fun of somebody.
I can't see anybody to make fun of. You want me to tell some jokes?
The Scottish one you just told was
Yeah,
funny.
you can tell that one. Tell that
How
one.
about why didn't God give women brains?
Because they wouldn't love men.
No,
Ah, that was a good answer.
Okay.
they didn't have penises to put them in.
That's
a
just as
good
good.
answer, too. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I like both of them.
We were both on the same
yeah,
page.
yeah, you
there.
are. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You probably would offend.
Hey, Kevin Dixon, baby. How are you?
Come on, Liz, another joke.
Yeah. All right. Why do Scottish people wear kilts?
Why,
I like
Lizard?
this.
Because lambs or sheep can hear zippers a mile away.
Yeah, that is good. I think that is funny. You're going to hell for that one, but,
Yeah,
but it
yeah,
is
yeah.
funny. So Terry Collins is in the house, okay? He has a show called Damaged Goods. Type how they can find your show, and I'll tell them.
Okay. We wait.
We wait a couple minutes,
Yeah, yeah,
guys.
yeah.
Mickey Lee is in the house, everybody, from 93.3, right? WMMR, right, Mickey?
Awesome.
Type. Okay, Terry Collins. Tara, we can give you a plug as well, darling. Damaged Goods. I love you. Bob is watching. Hey, Bob.
That sounded very sexy, Jerry.
It did?
Yes.
Bob.
We know what Jerry does in her spare time with these foam.
It was great meeting you, Ray, as well, at Palermo's. We had a great show, guys, right? Hamilton Radio was there representing at Palermo's. Yep, for Smoked Ice. What a great show. Yep. Hey, Amy. The show will start in about 5 minutes, guys, and you'll get to hear my theme song.
Yay.
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 So, yep. Randy Shank said he's going to put my theme song on his playlist.
Nice.
Everybody check out Randy Shank. He's a hip-hop artist. He's an amazing young man, one of my faves. He was on my show last week, and he always keeps it clean for me, guys. He's a great
Very
young
nice.
man.
Yeah.
Yep.
Am I Margaret to put your show?
Huh?
Am I Margaret to put your?
Well, Mickey Lee, you going to put my theme song on your playlist as well?
Absolutely should.
All right. He's going to be a guest on my show.
Nice.
Yep, he also is a singer. He sang on Saturday night. Dominic Azzaro sat in with the drums. He used to be their drummer, Smoked Ice, so he sat in for a couple songs also. It was such a great night. And Chad, dancing, all right? You got to check out the video. This kid is unbelievable,
Okay.
all right? He's also going to be a guest. I steal everybody.
She does.
I do. Make everybody
I can't
famous.
imagine you go out to an event with Jerry and she just
Listen,
hustles for guests on the radio,
Listen.
right?
No. She's enjoying it, having fun, staring at everything. Feet are moving. Oh my God. It's
okay? There you go. Hey, Luke Lucas. All right. Kevin, my Easter was great, Sweet Pea. Thank you. Yep. Hi, Dario. Dario.
No, there's no snow
Wait.
coming. There's no more snow coming.
What are you talking about?
No.
There's more
not.
snow.
No.
Is this a joke?
I didn't see anything in the forecast.
I have to pick up my daughter at the airport. They're all on a cruise.
Nice.
What do you mean? Now, how am I going to do that if it snows?
You can drive in the snow.
What if it's a blizzard?
It's not going to be a blizzard.
Oh, okay.
That's my Christmas party, Dad.
It's a little too warm to worry about.
Isn't this crazy?
There's no spring. I looked at had 2 weeks in the weather. There's not one nice day.
Well, my birthday on March 7th brought the blizzard.
Yeah.
That was great.
Yeah. I feel like I'm never going to get on my motorcycle for like 2 days in a row
Oh.
until mid-May.
Walt Sanders, hey baby, Walt Sanders tomorrow night. Go on Facebook. You could go on I'll share it and everything. He's going to do a free concert from his living room, all Elvis songs. He's an amazing ET. I love you, Walt. His music is awesome. You re-watched our interview, but you're going to be on again. I think it's in May, right? Walt, right? I think May. This time, Walt, guess what? We now can have you live on Skype. Okay? This is going to be great. So you're going to have a concert here again. Yep. No Elvis attire. You don't need it. Your voice is unbelievable. You just sing your songs, and you're just amazing. Yep. I love it. I love watching your shows. And Sunday night, Walt did a video. I posted it. It's all Elvis gospel he sang. So it was beautiful. All right, guys. So Guitar Boogie Bob is watching. I told everybody about the show Saturday. Smoked Ice, guys. All right, so we're going to get ready to start. All right, Gino?
I'm doing it.
Let's do it, baby.
30 seconds, guys. Recording?
Ladies and gentlemen, Jerry Petito. I'm not an addict, I'm just an ass. And in time this too shall pass. I'm not an addict, I'm just an ass. Jerry Petito taught the class. I'm not an addict, I'm just an ass. Loves the answer, the greener grass. I'm not an addict, I'm just an ass. One day at a time, free at last.
When you don't know just what to do,
Just what to do, just what to do.
if what you're feeling is really true,
Is it really true? Is it really true?
just keep your ideas safe and sound.
Safe and sound, safe and sound.
That's exactly how change is found.
Change is found, change is found. I'm not an addict, I'm just an ass. And in time this too shall pass. I'm not an addict, I'm just an ass. Jerry Petito taught the class. I'm not an addict, I'm just an ass. Loves the answer, the greener grass. I'm not an addict, I'm just an ass. One day at a time, free at last.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jerry Petito Show on Hamiltonradio.net. So, tonight is more of a serious topic. We just want to bring awareness to some things that are going on. Carlisle Indian Industrial School is the topic. We're going to have a special call-in guest, and I have two friends of mine that have been here before. Introduce yourselves, guys.
Kathy Clemens.
I'm a lizard.
Okay. How I got to meet everybody that's really a part of all this was from Lizard, actually. He got in touch with me, and I like to tell this story. It's true, believe me. He got in touch with me on Facebook about a year ago or so and invited me to a sweat lodge to come hang out naked with him and sweat. All right? So anyway, I got to meet Kathy through Lizard and a few other really great people that are involved in this cause. So what I would like to do, guys, you've heard the poems, but I would like to read them for everybody else out there. Now, the two poems that I wrote, guys, are really good poems and so much truth. I didn't just come up with any of this stuff. I did my research, all right? The facts that I put in these poems also blew my mind, okay? So sit down for a few minutes and enjoy this and really take in what I'm going to say, okay, guys?
Oh, by the way, Jerry, we don't do lodges naked. We just wanted to see you naked.
Oh, that's it. All right, baby. Well, it worked, right, Lizard? All right, so, Sacred Pipe. There's so much to say, where do I start? I just never knew we played such a part. In causing this pain to our very first mate, instead of showing them love, we've exercised hate. We've taken their land, to them it belonged. Corporate America needs to right what's been wronged. We went in their homes and stole all their kids, put a price on their scalp to the highest of bids. The women were sterile, but not by their choice. We drugged them and finally silenced their voice. The kids were brought out of their homes to a foreign place and lived like drones. Most never saw their families again. They were raped and abused and tortured by men. Their goal, as I know it, is sickening to me. To put an end to our natives, how can this be? I just cannot fathom that this still goes on. Corporate America is Hitler. I thought that was gone. Carlisle Indian Industrial School was where these kids were brought. Their hair was cut. Their names were changed. They were threatened when they were taught. No longer can you be the native you are. You will be groomed to our liking and left with a scar. This horrible school, with this motto they ran, kill the Indian, save the man. Over 500 treaties were meant for their aid. As treaties were broken, more treaties were made. Over 500 treaties were promised to them. In 2016, you would think that would end. But again, it goes on as I'm sharing the news. We need to help stop this or Dakota Pipeline they'll lose. Guys, this poem was written in 2016 when this was all the hype, okay? Even the term that we always use, we thought it was funny, made us amused. Indian giver is now making sense. I'll tell you the meaning in their defense. Everything we gave them was already theirs. We took it all back and nobody cares. Their water source depends on this. Without this access, their lives are at risk. I never knew Redskins meant what it did. To most Americans, the meaning was hid. It just meant color, we all just thought. Not being scalped, their head was bought. To make matters worse, to break them once more, their burial grounds were ripped up, it ripped at their core. Standing Rock is their land, not ours to steal. Corporate America needs to bow down and kneel. Even the peace pipe has a real name. The sacred pipe it is called, to make their thoughts tame. Lizard man, as we all know, Native American is not he, But if you ask him this, he'll say he's really a Trenton wannabe. This isn't humane, not then and not now. We all need that peace pipe to have a powwow. So guys, that was the first poem I wrote. Okay, when I was shocked at everything that I learned for writing this poem until I had to write poem number 2. Remember that? This is when I think it took a piece of my heart right out of my chest. Okay, so this poem is called Peace Pipe 2. When I wrote Sacred Pipe, after learning what I did, learning what I didn't know, to us so much was hid. Special thanks that I must share to my friends who sought me out, made me aware of horrible things, things that some of us still doubt. To Lizard Man, I really got to say a big thank you to my friend for reaching out to me that day. And a thank you to Ruth Ann. This lady sure does know in detail things we've done. Now to the world we've got to show. Ruth Ann, I love you. Then my friend Kathy. Standing Rock has her voice to help maintain her homeland, their homeland, hoping one day they will rejoice. The honor and pleasure was mine to have met Ohitika, this brave woman, 100% Native American descent. She was here on my show, guys. The insight I was given, these people just don't know. It's affected me so much. Corporate America is now my foe. The Doctrine of Discovery is a movie loaned to me. Unmasking Domination Code is one we all must see. Let's stop and think what we were taught, lied to from our government about why wars were fought. Growing up in Catholic school, it made me feel so wrong. Even as a child, my intuition was so strong. How can God be part of this man-made crap they tell? Instead of living just for Christ, the rise of man now fell. They twisted God's word and told you to kneel, bowing down to just man and kissing his heel. Christopher Columbus is part of the blame. He didn't discover, he stole when he came. He spread Christianity, believe me, not so. He worked for the devil, believe me, I know. He came to the natives whose land he invaded. They welcomed this friend, with his trust he persuaded. They had no clue what was in store. They soon would die, and so much more. I visited the Vatican many years ago. With all the gold it's covered in, this ain't the God I know. The hierarchy of Catholic Church joined forces with our leaders. The country claimed Christianity, but really Satan breeders. The Vatican houses documents still today that they hold true to dominate and dehumanize. This is not what God would do. They took his word and twisted it to serve their evil needs. They claim that they are holy. They've planted tainted seeds. The government and their church declared war upon these folks. Murdering and starving them was the beginning of this hoax. A non-Christian world they wouldn't have, although Christians they're not. Conform to them or you will die, beheaded, sliced, or shot. Invade and capture and subdue all pagans that they found. They're now our slaves for our gain. Their lives to us are bound. All their possessions are ours. Their kids we have taken. Their independent existence has now been forsaken. The 15th century Pope, Alexander VI was he. Let's spread the gospel by means of war. What a great idea this will be. The Domo effect was also in play, forcing submission and told what to say. Columbus believed that he had this right to discover and dominate all land in his sight. The worst part about this, Holy Scripture he used, Genesis 1:28 is the verse he abused. To dominate all creatures that creep along the earth, considering them animals, they are humans from God at birth. The massacre at Wounded Knee, 425 people died that day, slamming babies on rocks while laughing and singing hooray. Then they hung bodies, waiting to burn, in groups of 13 alive and waiting their turn. 13 men signified Jesus and his men, killing in God's name. This soon became a trend. The 1950s still upheld what the Catholic Church had started. Indian versus U.S. Supreme still totally disregarded. The papal bulls, as noted today, were written by popes because they had the say. This is sickening, guys. Listen to this. 1992 was not so long ago. In court, we tried to revoke them, and once again, the court said no. Nullus is another term I think that you should hear. It deems the natives null and void, non-existent, far and near. Christian civilization is a term I never knew. Forcing you to now succumb, if not, we're killing you. Let's get this straight. Let's make this clear. If you don't become civil, we'll hang you and cheer. 20 medals of honor to those soldiers were given. For the people they tortured, they should now be rescinded. God says he's fair. In his judgment you earn. The Catholic Church and the government, in hell they will burn. Now, guys, I want to make something clear. I grew up Catholic. The majority of my family members are still Catholic. I'm not against Catholic people. I'm against the organization. I'm against what they're doing, okay, and how they're fooling innocent people. All right, so let's get that straight right there, okay, guys? I want to make sure they didn't take this off because something just happened here. All right, so guys, who will be calling in? Tell everyone who she is.
Sandy from Circle Legacy Center should be calling in around 5:15. Circle Legacy Center has been working on the Carlisle Indian School project. So she's going to be calling in to talk about the history of the industrial school and what the current state of the project is, and pretty much everything that's going on there. They are the experts, as far as I know, on this project.
Okay. So before she calls in, so what got you guys involved in all this? These are yours, by the way.
Why I'm involved, I don't know how I got started involved in the history of Native Americans, but why I'm involved, I mean, there's a lot of people that have been suppressed, and everybody that comes to this country is considered the lower standard of people. The Italians, the Guineas, the Irish were considered monkeys. Everybody was suppressed and used for slavery and so forth. The Native Americans are a history that is not taught. It's tried to be erased. I call them the forgotten people. How many of you have had contact or think of Native American people as Americans? The closest you've probably ever come to is a John Wayne movie, and that's what you picture a Native American as. Still today, she talked about Standing Rock. There was 10,000 Native Americans there and 10,000 non-Native Americans there from all over the world. Peacefully. These people weren't just there to bring up the fact that they were being genocide or that they're being suppressed today and neglected. They were there trying to save our natural resources, not just for Native Americans, but for the whole world. There were 10,000 people there, the most powerless people in America, fighting the most powerful people, saying, hey, we're tired of this. We're tired of corporate America just doing what they want. I think there's a lot of people out there that feel the same way. These were the only ones who were brave enough to gather together and actually make a stand. And when they did it in a peaceful, praying manner. They had drums and prayers, and the oil companies came with military force. If you look up Standing Rock on your Google, you will see the unbelievable military that came to fight people without weapons. You heard her mention Wounded Knee. This was Wounded Knee all over again. It was, I just can't even, it was unbelievable. Sound cannons and percussion grenades, water cannons, people in full military gear with automatic weapons. You talk about AR-15s, they were all armed with these weapons and ready to use them. Just waiting for the Native Americans to break their peaceful protection. They don't want to call it a protest. Trying to get them to be violent so that they could retaliate.
I think our caller's here.
Great.
Hello?
Yes. Hello.
Hi.
This is Sandy.
Hi, Sandy. How
Hi,
are you?
Sandy.
Hi.
So
Beautiful poems, by the way.
Oh, thank you. I could email you copies of them. I have them all on file if you'd like.
Wonderful.
So I have some questions for you, but before we get into the questions, why don't you tell everyone out there, Gino, I hear her a little low. Is that me or is... Okay. Why don't you tell everyone out there who you are and what part you play in this, and then we'll talk about some of these questions.
Okay. My name is Sandra Chinchilli. My maiden name is Chips, Chipps, 2 P's, please. My Aglala Sue, and German. And I have spent my life, I got sales calls coming in. So if this is breaking up, that's what that is.
That's okay.
Two at the same time,
Okay.
of course. But I've spent most of my life advocating for Indian rights on the policy side. I've been a lifetime member of the National Congress of American Indians. I used to be an NCAI brat. I used to go and sharpen pencils, and so that's pretty much. I couldn't dance for you. I couldn't sing a song for you, but I could tell you what laws were passed when and who sponsored them and what the impact was. So that I was a policy wonk, and that's how I spent my life. And now I'm told these are the golden years, and this opportunity came up. I've been a member of Circle Legacy. I also serve with I'm United Methodist, and I've served in leadership on our committees on Native American ministries at the conference level and at the jurisdiction level. And I worked for a faith-based nonprofit and represented the American Baptist churches at the UN and OAS during the consultation stage of the Declaration of Indigenous Rights, both versions.
I think I'm impressed.
Definitely an expert.
Well, there were a lot of experts. It was a lot of people that made it happen. So anyway, that's my background. So I'm not so much on.
But what I want to know is this:
old culture.
What
Yes.
happened to you? Like, what made you say, early on, this is a cause for me?
My father used to take me. I think I was 6 or 7 years old the first time my father took me to the Carlisle Cemetery. And at that time, back in the 50s, at that time, you could just pull up and it was right there on the side of the road. And he'd park his car and we'd go over. And I grew up in the city in Philadelphia. And everywhere you went in Philadelphia, there was a line. And I remember thinking, where's the line to see? And my father said, well, there's no line. There's really not too many people that pay much attention here. But he said we had relatives, we had ancestors that went here. I had 2 ancestors that were in the very first class. One was 7 and one was 9. The boy's name was Walks in the Clouds, which tells me he was kind of a daydreamer. And the girl's name was Keepscane, which is a family name. And she was 9. Her name became Bertha Chips, and his became Jeffrey Chips. Not Jeffrey, Geoffrey, really English.
Okay.
And so they were in the first class, and we would stand there in honor of them, and my father would scratch the ground a little bit, take something out of his pocket, and bury it by the cemetery there. So, and that's where I met Kathy and Lizard. Every Memorial Day weekend, the Saturday of every Memorial Day weekend, we have a remembrance ceremony, and we have it in the cemetery. So, and that, by we, I mean Circle Legacy and American Indian, I get it confused. American Indian Society of Washington, D.C. So there could be 20 people there, there could be 50 people there, there could be 10 people there. It just depends. But we do that every year. So that's how I got started. And I just love my daddy. And I love my mother too, but I was more simpatico with my dad and his kind of down-home roots. My mother listened to classical music. My father listened to country. So I'm a little bit country.
You're a little bit country? A little bit rock and
Yeah.
roll?
Yeah.
You know, the reason I asked you that question was because I have to connect with people. And I like to know a little bit about their background growing up. And you said something that I really could relate to. I had that with my dad as well, more than with my mom. And this is so funny, you mentioned the cemetery. My dad passed away in July, and they just put his name he's in the wall with my mom, and they just put his name, and I just went to see it on Sunday for the first time. And thinking about what you said, that there was no line, there were no people there, that just made me, have a little bit, it was sad for me, but now I can relate to you even on a stronger level, because I probably would have felt the same way young if that happened to me. So now I understand you a little bit more. So
Well, thank you. I also had a mentor who later adopted me as her daughter. Her name was Rosemary Mandan. She passed away a couple years ago, but she got me a beautiful regalia when I was, 17, so that I could dance. And I was very shy, kind of antisocial. So she thought this would break me out of that. So she got me a beautiful regalia. But it's the last thing I wanted to do. So I finally won third prize at one of the powwows for a fancy shawl, and so I won it, and I thought, I got to tell her. So I took the ribbon over to her. I said, "This is for you, and I don't want to dance." And she said, "Well, that's all right." She said, but make sure we give the regalia to someone that'll get use out of it. And then I'm thinking, oh, wow, this is great. I don't have to do anything. And she said, but don't think you don't have to be doing anything. She said, being Indian's a verb.
I love that.
Yeah.
So
that's what she took me to NCAI when I was just a kid, and I was hooked. I saw that piece of it, addressing the policy, the things that impact the lives of the folks back home. I saw that as being part of the solution. And that's what I wanted to do. And it doesn't get a lot of attention, and it's kind of boring and very dry. But I think everything that I did then is what prepared me to do what I'm doing now.
Well, I want to say something before I start asking you questions, and I need everybody out there to really understand this. First of all, if anyone has a cause that they want to bring light to, just get in touch with me and we'll talk about it. Okay? I'm not opposed to any of that. But the reason why this is so important to me is because it's still happening today. Two things are going on in my mind as I'm listening to you guys talk. Number one, they try to erase it all from history, because growing up, I didn't learn about any of this. I was in shock when I learned all this, right? And here I am in my 50s. I didn't know.
Same with me.
Okay?
Catholic school did not teach about the Trail of Tears or anything.
So
neither did public school.
No schools did. I mean, we knew about slavery. We knew about what went on with all the wars. We knew everything, the concentration camps with the Jewish people. I mean, the thing is, I never learned any of this. You know, I was one of the first people to say when I heard a few years ago that they wanted to change the name Redskins from the team. I laughed and said, oh, stop, until I learned. Now I would like that to happen, right? So think about all this. So the reason why this is so important, and it should be important for you as well, is because this is still going on. This isn't something that has ended, 50 years ago, 100 years ago. It's still going on. So that's why we will continue to bring light on all this, okay?
So, Jerry, the other night I went to a father-daughter dance, and of course I look a little Native American, and this young girl was staring at me, and she finally said, she's 7 years old. She said, they're teaching us Native American history in school. I said, wow. And she started telling me about the War of 1812 and some of the other battles and all this romanticized things. And I said, is that all they taught you? And she got quiet and she says, my aunt and uncle are Native Americans in, I forget where she said they were from, but they told me about the Trail of Tears. So the schools are telling them nothing about the devastation, the real history, still this day.
So Sandy, I have a few questions for you. All right, so the Carlisle Indian School Project, okay? Tell us a little bit more about like how that got started and really the importance of it. Because we've touched base on it, a little bit here and there, but tell us the importance of it and when it got started, and also tell us where the students come from.
Okay. You mean the students at Carlisle?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Well, let's address that first.
Yeah.
Okay. The first students that were there were the students who were children of the tribes that were involved in the Battle of the Little Bighorn. Because the school started in 1879. And you kind of have to look back in history when you're try to look through their lens and see what was going on politically to kind of understand. When we look at history through our contemporary sensibilities, it's a lot different. Things change, When in 1879, first of all, the Battle of the Little Bighorn was their 9/11. That was when across the country, they were people that were clamoring to just kill them all, just get rid of all the Indians. If they could do this horrible thing, that they should all be killed. So Richard Pratt, who had some kind of what appears to be in today's perspective very cruel objectives. In his day, he was a progressive because he wasn't talking about how to kill them all. He was saying, no, wait a minute, these people are salvageable. We can save these people. We just have to take away their savage ways. So that's what was going on at that time. So the first students were Sioux, Cheyenne, and Arapaho, and the Allies. They were the first students, and they were very young. They brought them when they were young. Richard Pratt did go and talk to the tribes and the parents to persuade them to send their children. I don't think they wanted to upset the tribes all that much. But the concept went into other hands as it spread across the country. Carlisle was the first government-run Indian boarding school, off-reservation. They wanted them far away from their families. There had been a lot of things done to earlier than that. They used to take the children of medicine families and mutilate them in some way, cut off a hand, cut off a foot, cut off a finger, anything, because you could not be a medicine man if you didn't have a whole body. So that was done before. So now they were taking, but they knew they had to take the children away because they lived the culture every day. And so that was the first class. Then it became more, they spread out more. There were students that came from Puerto Rico. There were students from the Philippines. There was a lot of students from Alaska, which was not the part of the United States at that time. So, but that came after the turn of the century. It appears that after the turn of the century, the school became popular. There were waiting lists of students to come on. They had to increase the number of students that they took after 1879, and they kind of didn't know what they were doing either. They had a lot of Quaker and Methodist and teachers that were on staff at the school, and they were just trying to find their way too. So there's not a whole lot of information on the first classes, the beginning classes. But at the turn of the century, it looks like the students were older and not so vulnerable. And in some cases, it looked like Pratt was even being moved a little bit further to the left, further to humanity than as were the students. So it's an interesting dynamic of what went on. Because after the turn of the century, like I said, you had, and then there were students that came from the woodland tribes, and from all over the country, just all over the country. California, Southwest, the Apaches. There's a large number of Apaches that are in the Geronimo's band was taken there. They were mostly children. The children that were part of his band. So
but I have a question.
That's where they came from.
I have
Yes.
a question about that. You used the word popular before. You said the school was becoming popular.
Yes.
But all these children were brought there against their will?
No.
Okay.
No. Not that that isn't to say that there weren't some that were taken, but it just appeared later on, after the turn of the century, that the school, and there could have been a lot of reasons for that. I heard some of the descendants say that, and some boarding school students themselves say, look, I wanted to go to boarding school, so I got 3 squares a day. So there were a lot of different reasons why they were there. It wasn't like the residential schools in Canada have and Canada has been dealing with the impact of the residential school, they call them residential schools up there, that era. They have been dealing with that for the past 10 years. There's been a lot of healing and reconciliation things going on, and the United States is just getting started. It's like the universe has said, okay, it's time. It's time to deal with this. When I was a kid, if you talked about boarding school, or I would say, I went to visit Carlisle with Daddy, and they would say, shh, you were shushed. So now it's time. Everybody's talking about it. There's organizations popping up to address the impact, because it still has had an impact on Indian communities. They're still dealing with it. They're still dealing with and I'll just give you one example. The Oliphant decision was a Supreme Court decision that there was a case where a non-Indian man committed a crime on a reservation out in Washington State. And he didn't feel that he should have to go through the Indian tribal court because he was not an Indian. And it went all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court used the doctrine of discovery as a basis for law. And that decision took away the right of Indian communities to protect their own citizens. From then on, the law was passed in 1978, I believe.
That was
Or
yesterday.
Exactly.
Yes. Until 2008 or 2000, when they passed the Law Enforcement Improvement Act, that was when they passed legislation to correct that. But until that, between those years, the only thing tribal police could do for a non-citizen or non-member was hold them. The FBI was hold them for the FBI, and they could only hold them for a certain amount of time because they could do misdemeanors, the tribal police, but they couldn't hold let's say somebody rape was big problem. They could only hold them for maybe 4 or 5 hours. If the FBI didn't show up, they had to let them go.
Why?
That was the law. Because this person was not a tribal member and were not to be subjected to Indian law. And, it kind of baffled a lot of people. Now, a lot of tribes got around it and did some work with state police and had a lot of Indians who were in the state police. And so, but that's what they've had to do. This is the impact of the doctrine of discovery. So, and growing up in Pennsylvania, not learning anything about Indians, a lot of my friends are woodland Indians. And I'm having a big birthday, and I'm not going to say what it is. But I am just now learning what tribes were here before William Penn. And that's one of the things that we want to do in this place in Carlisle, the place that Indian people were brought so that Indian culture would go away and they would become assimilated into the white culture and their savage ways would be done with. So it's important for us in this place to build a place where people can come and learn the truth about it and also learn what tribes were here. Here. And in the land that we're looking at, to build an interpretive center, a heritage center, we call it. We want to have an outside destination where we can show the tribes that came, and then also have enough land to, we're trying to entice tribes to bring their businesses here so that it's full circle. We have the tribes that were here first, the tribes that were brought here, and why, and their story, and the tribes and the culture, a thriving culture today that can own a hotel and a restaurant, so that we can kind of say it was meant to end here, but here we are, and now we own a piece of it.
So I have a question for you, twofold here. I want to know if the town of Carlisle supports this project, and does the U.S. Army support this project?
Well, about a few years ago, when we started this, Circle Legacy, they were going to tear down a farmhouse that had been part of the school program. The school was self-sufficient, so they had farms and a couple farms, and they had a pig farm, and they had a dairy farm, and so all of this was part of the school, and they would sell their goods. and in town. So they were very much a part of the town, and this is a history that the Army knows. The Army has reused all the buildings, but the buildings are still there, and they learn about it. But they had a program. As Circle Legacy started meeting with them about the farmhouse and all that, we noticed that they had an old tradition called Jim Thorpe Sports Days. And it's when the trainers of all the war colleges from the different military branches would get together, and it's a fun thing where they would compete in different sports. And I went to it, and it was a lot of testosterone, even from the women, talking about Jim Thorpe, the great Olympian hero. What I wasn't hearing was Jim Thorpe, the great Indian Olympic hero. And I got talking to Carol Kerr, who worked in the office of the public relations office of the barracks. And I said, what would you think if we could invite a Native veteran or public servant to come and open up the ceremonies and just to bring some Indianness to it?
I like that word, Indianness.
And she said, well, what? And I said, what would the Army do? And she said, well, there's a Jim Thorpe bedroom, so they could stay in the Jim Thorpe bedroom. They could make a little speech. You could go to the VIP reception. You could, if they stay for the whole thing, they could give out the awards at the end. So we thought we'd try it. And we had our 5th one last year. And it's just been amazing and so wonderful for our veterans.
Yes.
So wonderful for them. And all of them, and some of them are just bona fide, multi-decorated war heroes.
That's beautiful.
And I said, what did you like the most about it? And every one of them just looked at me and said, I stayed in the Jim Thorpe bedroom.
Oh, that's awesome.
So, the Army loves it, and they thank us, and they've gone further. And so now when they open it up, they do a thing, and they dug into Jim Thorpe's history, and they give some statistics about him. I mean, Jim Thorpe was the most famous person that went to Carlisle, and they were, who knew? He was the founder of the NFL. The rules. It was the Carlisle Indian School football team that threw the first successful forward pass at Franklin Field in Philadelphia.
Wow. Who knew that?
Yes.
That is so
Yes.
cool.
And this is the exchange that we have and with the Army, and we're very proud of that relationship. We've helped them. Circle Legacy is the local organization, and kind of cattle prodded us to start. They're small and local. We needed a larger organization that could raise more than $25,000 a year. So I had been the vice president of Circle Legacy. I stepped down and still a board member, but I went to be president of, I was elected president of the Carlisle Indian School Project. And we have an all-Indian board and an all-Indian advisory board.
Oh, wow.
And
I love that.
And so planning what we wanted to do, what has been like nailing Jell-O to a wall. But I think we're narrowing things down, and a lot of stuff is stuck. And what we want to do, our interpretation, and the reason we selected land is we want to keep a good relationship with the Army. We don't want we don't want to be under their thumb and have a change of command interfere with our own interpretation.
Right.
So we're looking at land, and we have. This is what we're comfortable with and what we're doing. So we formed the Carlisle Indian School Project. We have our own board of directors. And Circle Legacies is the boots on the ground. So the Army does, the whole town, the Cumberland Valley Visitors Bureau has been so helpful in directing us who to talk to, when to talk to them, even interceding on our behalf. AHEC, which is the Army Heritage and Education Center, is, you know, including us in a lot of their, supporting our events. We have 2 annual events. They're both Circle Legacy events. One is the Jim Thorpe Sports Days, and the other is the Remembrance Ceremony on Memorial Day weekend.
And where do you hold them?
They're both on the barracks. The Jim Thorpe Sports Days is held on Indian Field, right where Jim Thorpe and that the national champion Carlisle football team used to practice with Dickinson College. That's the same field, and now they have bleachers. But we have that there, and the remembrance ceremony is at the cemetery, and from the cemetery we go to the Letort Community Center, and in their backyard by the pool, they have a pavilion. In fact, that's where I had, when I first met Kathy and Lizard, I had directed them to that. We were heading to the Letort Pavilion, and they couldn't find us.
Sandy, can you talk a couple minutes about the repatriation of the children that are in the cemetery? What happened last summer?
Sure. The Arapahoes petitioned first of all, let's say that the cemetery, there's Section 106 of the, and I don't want to get too technical but this is who I am. I'm policy wonk. It's the Historical Preservation Act, the National Historical Preservation Act. It is a way that Indians can claim Section 106 is about Indian remains and stuff. So the Arapaho tribe, through Yufna Soldier Wolf, who was the TIPO for the Tribal Historical Preservation Officer, applied to repatriate 3 students. These students were in the same class as my relatives. They were in the first class. And they
Internet
came
security
out.
alert. Your computer might be infected by harmful viruses. Please do not shut down or reset your computer. The following data might be compromised if you continue. Passwords, browser history, credit card information, local hard disk files. These viruses are well known for identity and credit card theft. Further action on this computer or any other device on your network might reveal private information.
Am I still connected?
Yeah, you're still here.
Hi.
Okay.
That was interesting.
Yeah.
Big brother
Yeah.
watching us.
Yeah,
Big brother is watching us, okay?
they are. Too much talk about the Army.
Okay.
Yes. Oh, yeah, let's be good now.
Okay.
Anyway, the Pentagon had this whole procedure and had agreed to pay for all the expenses for repatriating all the remains, by the way. So Yufna brought a delegation from her tribe out, a group of young people and a group of elders. And the commanding officer, the commandant, asked me if, or asked Marianne Robbins, who was the president of Circle Legacy, if we would do something to help make these people feel comfortable and welcome. So I contacted Yufna and asked her if it was okay if we had a feed. That's in Plains Indians, when there's a funeral, the family has a feed for everyone. It's a dinner. It's like not that much different than what we do here. So I contacted her. I said, we would like to do something. And we went and brought food and also fed the archaeologists. We fed anybody that was some of the military escorts, whoever needed a meal, we were feeding everyone. And we had a wonderful time. We brought gifts for them and brought two of our elders in. The remembrance ceremony has been going on for, this will be the 45th year. And we had two elders that were there. And this was the thing that a lot of Indian people who have never been to Carlisle, and a lot of people have it on their bucket list to make a pilgrimage, but many of them haven't been, and it's so far away they don't hear much about it. They thought that these students were out here all alone and that nobody was paying any attention to them. And it meant so much to them. They got very emotional when they were talking to our elders and learned that they were not forgotten. We were their family while they weren't here. And so it was a very emotional time together, and they were happy for that, and we were too. So they found two of the. By the way, the barracks is closed during repatriation. So it's a little bit different. If anybody drives by, there's a big black fence that goes around. You can't see in, and nobody can see out. It's kind of strange. And they found two of the remains. But when they went for the third child, there were two sets of remains in the one grave, and neither one of them could have possibly been him. So they're still searching, and the Pentagon is still paying for it. So they're making. I'm really kind of proud of the effort that they're making. So yeah, and this year they have set aside time at the end of August to do this, which is very hot. They have set up air-conditioned tents while they do this, and so this year there's Sioux people are coming from North and South Dakota, and they will be repatriating, I think, 6 or 7 remains. So we'll do the same thing. When we'll have a feed for them when they come and visit, bring them gifts, and we kind of stand back, and this is a whole process. They come in for orientation. You know, they're busy the whole time, so we just work with the barracks and getting some time set aside for us to do that. And they're very cooperative. The whole town, really. The Historical Society, Dickinson College has an absolutely amazing program, the Data Resource Center you can access on their website. Carlisle Indian School Data Resource Center, and you can access all kind of information. They won a grant a few years ago to digitize all the information on the Carlisle Indian School.
And all the children, and all the children?
And all the, well, not all the children.
Okay.
They don't, there is not a list that includes, they have a number, they think. The researchers have found that there's like evidence of 10,606 students, but there's really only maybe 6,500 names that they have. So they're still searching.
They're still searching. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Do you guys want to ask her anything, or have her talk about? You guys know everything anyway, but like have her talk about something.
Yeah, we know nothing.
Okay.
Compared to,
Would you guys like to ask her something then?
You're saying 10,000 children that died in this school, or 10,000?
No, attended.
Attended.
They don't have a number of how many students died. They had 189 student graves. In fact, for many years, in the tourist in the tourist literature, the only thing they had about the school was the cemetery, and it said, and it was kind of hard to read, you know, Carlisle Indian Industrial School Cemetery, 189 or 186 student graves, as if that was a tourist destination.
Yeah. That's
Come-
heartbreaking.
Well, I have to say, like Lizard and I rode up there last year, and we stopped at various places in the town, and very few people
Had a
any clue what was going on at the native. Like the
Well, that was one of the
Yeah.
things that motivated us when we started going there, is meeting people born and raised there that didn't even know there was a school.
Yeah, we went to the Army
know?
Museum, and you would have thought there would have been an entire room dedicated to the Indian school there.
Why
and
isn't it?
There was nothing.
Is there anything now? I mean, if the Army's so on board with everything.
Well, they set aside November as Native American Month. They do have a program, and they try to have in their exhibit, and this is another thing that we're working with them. I asked them if they have in their exhibit or during that month that, because, you know, when you walk in, you get somebody's dog tag, and you learn their life as you go through the museum. So I don't know how else to explain it. And I said, well, during that month, could you have Native veterans? And he said, unfortunately, we don't have very much. He said, we just can't grab information about people because their families might not want it publicized. So he said a veteran or a veteran's family can give us information on a Native veteran, and then we would have it for our files. So I've kind of been directing people to Natives to send their information in. That's for the Army, you know, for the Army, the Air Force, the reserves, the Army Coast Guard. No, and all of the Army branches that come under the.
Because I think that's important.
Yeah, the right in town. They should have a
I mean,
permanent.
That's right. To me, if
Yeah.
I go there, I would almost expect that.
Well, they're, like I said, they're not that old either. There's a lot of, and I'm not defending anything, but Carlisle's a fascinating place. A lot of history comes together there. The Confederacy hit Carlisle before they hit Gettysburg in 1861, I
But we
believe.
never knew that, did we?
In fact, that farmhouse that we were trying to save, the Confederate Army, the generals bivouacked there before they stayed in that farmhouse. The generals stayed there, and their grunt soldiers were bivouacked on the yard. And that was where they stayed the night before they went to Gettysburg. The town of Gettysburg was hit. Or Carlisle Barracks was hit, and it closed it down for 5 years because they bombed it and buildings burned down, and it wasn't. Carlisle is actually the oldest, technically, is the oldest military barracks in the country. But because it was shut down for those 5 years, right after the Civil War, or right after the Battle of Gettysburg, it's the second oldest because West Point is
Technically, it's really
considered the
the
oldest.
oldest.
But technically, it is the oldest. It was a Hessian barracks before George Washington took it over at the Battle of Trenton. We're learning. I never knew any of this stuff growing up.
Sandy, when you and I were talking on the phone, you mentioned that for the project you wanted to have Native American, where Native Americans could come and sell their crafts and everything at the project. Can you talk about when you were discussing that with me a little bit?
Well, what but the object of the project is to build a interpretive center with a museum. What I'm talking about as far as the town, I think I was referring to more of the town. The Army Heritage and Education Center called a meeting of all the event planners, or most of the event planners in Carlisle. And one of them was the lady who plans the Arts and Crafts Fair, and I believe it's sometime in October. And she was asking if the reason for them calling the meeting was for us to talk about each other's events and how we could be more inclusive, that we can support each other's events and include other components of the population. And so this lady was asking if there were any Indian artisans who would be willing to set up in there. There was a gentleman who wanted to have something in the car show. This year, by the way, the school existed from 1879 to 1918. It was closed in 1918 to become a hospital for all the soldiers that were coming back from World War I. And so they had the Army Heritage and Education Center wants to have some kind of commemoration, and the ceremony is that you take down the old flag and put up the new flag, and that's like a change of command thing to show the school's closing, and it was 100 years ago. So one of the gentlemen, if you know anything about Carlisle, the first thing most people think of is their car shows. And there was a gentleman there who always wanted to have Indians riding on horseback, leading a bunch of Mustangs in for their car show. So that's another thing that's we're talking about. And so it's being involved in the community, you know, and so that's what I believe I was referring to. When we have the interpretive center, we are encouraging tribes to bring their businesses, and we're also want to encourage Indian artists to bring their artwork and, you know, have art shows.
That's
and
amazing. I think
you
that's
know,
wonderful.
Yeah, that's cool.
I mean, people are talking about having a powwow and, you know, building a place where we would have an arbor to have powwows. But not being a powwow person, and I don't mean any disregard. I just never took to that. But I think it's important. I like to go to them. I think that's an important, if this is what they want, then in a place where Indian culture wasn't allowed.
Yeah, I think it's a great expression.
I think that's a great idea to have an arbor where we could sponsor a powwow. So lots of ideas still floating around. We'll see when the rubber meets the road, we'll see how many of them survive. But that's our mission.
So, wow. You gave us a lot of information here. I didn't know most of it, obviously. I'm in a little bit of shock still with some of the things you said, especially about the Army. I mean, to me, right?
Army was listening.
The Army was definitely listening. I thought they were going to shut us down. So, Lizard Man, come on, speak.
I'm a little confused on the history. Of course, I'm sure I'll talk to you more about this when I see you personally. Well, you made it sound like a majority of these children were brought here voluntarily, and that it was something that the native culture looked fondly upon, sending their children to these schools. And maybe you could tell us a little more about the survival rate of these children, what was expected. The things I've read are just total catastrophic and it's just horrible to read.
What the children had to go through, you're talking about, right?
Right. Well, I've never been a researcher, so that's where we get our interpretation from the Cumberland County Historical Society and the research that Dickinson is doing. What I have found thus far as I know, we weren't in the United States was not doing the same thing that the Canadians were doing. But that was here. When you go out in other areas, don't forget, Carlisle spawned a whole lot of other boarding schools across the country. And in certain areas, in these pockets, there were people who just hated Indians. There were, in fact, at the turn of the century, if they caught children who were, a lot of children were kidnapped, and in certain areas. I'm not saying that this happened at Carlisle. I'm just saying that there is information, and there was a wonderful Wes Studi movie about it, where he played a Pinkerton man and acted like this was the most important accomplishment in his life, and at the end, after all, he didn't. He gave it up because it was tracking down Indian children who had run away from a boarding school, and they got paid a bounty for bringing them back. So there were all sorts of things that were cruel things, but again, you have to put on that lens of the 19th century.
Right, but from what I've read, and I went on and read some of the letters that the kids that were available online, and it just seemed like they weren't allowed to speak their own language. They couldn't wear their...
They cut their hair off?
Yeah, you can see the pictures that we put in front of us, which were how the kids came into the school in their beautiful native attire, and then what they had to wear. And, I understand the timing and everything, but no one looks happy, obviously. And
I was under the impression from everything that I researched that a lot of them were actually taken out of their homes against everyone's will.
Right. For what I read online and tried to research, it just didn't seem like most of these kids wanted to be there, and they were beaten and stuff if they were caught talking their own language and stuff. And that seems to be what I read right from the history. So to me, that's just a sad part of it.
Well, but I'm not sure about it. I think there were a lot of horrible things done to Indians, but I don't want to get them confused. The truth is bad enough.
Yes.
I have read some things and found out later that it wasn't true, that it was pertaining to another part of the country or another part of the world. So, let's keep it honest here. And I don't think it was. I don't think the parents wanted their children to come. That's why I said that there was some sort of a change after the turn of the century. And at the beginning, the purpose was to save these savages, and they did their psyops on these people. There were Indian people who bought the line, hook, line, and sinker, that their only value was their relationship with white people, European Americans. That was, and that kind of lived out its, that was a dynamic at Carlisle. There was I discovered a hero. Her Indian name was Zikalaza. Her English name was Gertrude Simmons, who became married. Her married name was Gertrude Bonin. She was one of the founders of what came out of Carlisle was a Pan American Indian advocacy organization. which was the forerunner to the National Congress of American Indians. It was the Society of American Indians, which had its first meeting in 1911. Gertrude Simmons was a music teacher at Carlisle, and she didn't necessarily buy that the only way Indians have value is by being associated with white people. She saw value in the culture of her people, and wanted to protect it, and went toe to toe with some. I guess you would compare it to like conservatives and liberals today. Just going at it. There was this dynamic going on, and it was held. The first one was held in Columbus, Ohio. This Ohio State University donated office space for them to meet, and Richard Pratt was the first keynote speaker at the first conference in 1911, and he said, you wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the fact that you were associated with European, with white Americans and white society, and you've given up your savage ways. Speech is very hard to read, but a lot of these people had bought that, and that's where, in modern contemporary terms, we would call them apples, red on the outside, white on the inside. And she started this organization and said, and this group was saying, no, we have to we have to do what white people tell us to do. And she said, well, where we need to be? We need to be in Washington. So anyway, she split from the Society of American Indians and moved to Washington, D.C., and founded the National Council of American Indians. And she lobbied Congress. She was a policy wonk. This is why she's my hero, I guess. And she fought for the rights of Indian people, and she did that till her death in 1938. Her husband tried to keep it up, but they say she used to write 400 letters a day, keeping tribal chairmen up to date on what was going on in Congress. So you better get here because they're going to take a vote on this, and we need to tell them they can't do it. And so when she died in 1938, it just kind of went away. In 1944, the Baltimore-Washington Quaker, their meeting, sponsored a meeting of American Indians to go to Denver, because it was like one stop for everybody. This was in 1944. 100 Native leaders showed up, and they used the foundation of the National Council of American Indians and named it the National Congress of American Indians. So that came out of Carlisle. It wasn't just the football team. It was that. And they also had a band. I mean, they certainly had a lot of challenges. But they had a lot of, I think they fooled a lot of people, certainly with the football team. Who would have thought? I mean, because they didn't have offense or defense. They had 9 guys that went out and kicked butt. And that included Dwight Eisenhower, all these Ivy League schools. Carlisle Indian School team, like I said, they're the first ones to throw a successful forward pass, which is, how many times do we see that every week with every football team? They defined what contemporary football is. So that's a tremendous success. Gertrude Simmons wrote the first Indian opera. She was a music teacher. And she called it Sundance.
Oh, wow.
Yes. She's remarkable. There are remarkable stories coming out of here, and we deserve for them to be told. I think they will shock a lot of people. The band traveled all over the world, the Carlisle Indian School Band. They played before the Royals in London.
What years are you talking about this happened in?
After the turn of the century, like I said, the school seemed to change. After I believe Pratt was forcibly retired in 1904, and they got a new administrator. So there were some changes made, and they had this band. They played in all the inaugurals. They had a debating team. They had a very elite debating team. These are all things that, because we don't learn anything about Indians, and there hasn't been any guidelines to teach anything about Indians in the state of Pennsylvania. I mean, as old as I'm going to be, it was that way for my whole life. Around Thanksgiving, we got to trace our hands and make headdresses. And that was about it. It was up to the teacher. And there were some teachers who were very interested. But that's what it took to learn anything about Indians. But as far as some of the dark history, there are lots of books coming out. As I said before, it's like the universe has said, now is the time for all of this to come out, for the truth to come out. And there's the National Native American Boarding School Healing Coalition. There's these organizations that are just beginning to help Indian communities heal from their traumatic experiences. It started at Carlisle. But what also started at Carlisle was a great generation that faced a different kind of enemy. I mean, this was actually what they did at Carlisle was more effective than running around shooting at them from behind rocks. I mean, they took their children and redefined who they were.
You mean the school was more effective in the procedure of a genocide of the Native Americans rather than war?
Yes. Yes. Because it changed who they were. It redefined their what culture meant. And that's why every generation seems to struggle to hang on to the culture, and it's a beautiful thing. I mean, I'm glad they do. I do too, but everybody does it in their own way. And that's why when they come to Carlisle, we had a group of young kids, and they said, "Can I wear my jingle dress?" And because I wrote a poem I want to say in the cemetery, and I'd like to dance an honor dance. And I said, "You can do whatever you want. And do I have to change, or can I wear it there?" So if you want to wear it there, you can wear it there, and you can wear it all day long.
So we're coming to the end of the show. And first of all, I want to say thank you very much for calling in and shedding light on all this stuff that I'm sure the majority of my viewers didn't know, because I certainly didn't know. What's one last thing you would like to say to everybody out there to, bring light to something, like just something that might click in them, that might make them say, you know what, we got to do something here? What would you like to share?
Make them get more involved.
Yes.
Well, I would say we take a note out of the Parkland students. What they went through is not much different than what happened to many Indian communities. and they're saying enough is enough. And I think that there's a lot of groups. You have the Me Too movement. You have, and Indians are saying it too. I mean, in 2016, when they got to Standing Rock, they said no, enough is enough. So this is where a lot of people are, and the only way you're going to get things done is if you treat your vote as if it's something important. And Pennsylvania, for a lot of the negative legislation that is presented to abrogate treaties, which comes up about every 10 years. Just do away with the treaties. You've broken them all, might as well just do away with them. But there are some things the tribes have held on to. So I think it's up to the tribes whether they get abrogated or not. The federal government broke them. Now, if the tribes want them abrogated, that's a different story, but it's not. There's always some legislator from a state that like Wisconsin or Washington State, that wants to abrogate treaties for whatever reason. And you have to be conscious and use your vote as something serious. Don't make a statement with your vote. You want to make a statement, stand up and talking to a microphone. Don't use your vote. Use it wisely. Find out what people vote for. And this is a policy wonk talking. You know, it's not hard with Google.
That's right.
You know, you can Google these people, find out what their voting record is.
That's right.
You know, find out what the NRA has them rated. You know, whatever your issue is. And hopefully people have a lot of different issues. But there are some one-issue people. But find out who you're putting in Congress. Indian people are federal. They have a federal relationship. Tribes are level with state governments. So the tribes have a federal government-to-government relationship. Whoever is in Congress can impact Indian communities, not like here. You have states can run interference. But you have, even though tribes are supposed to be equal with states, they're still not that powerful. Some of them are. Where all the oil is, some of them are. But that's what it took. And so that's what I would say. But again, I'm a policy wonk. And come to our remembrance ceremony. Come to our Jim Thorpe Sports Days, and share our culture.
Sandy, can you give your website address, please?
Well, there's Circle Legacy, and all you have to do is Google Circle Legacy Center, and it's a .org address. I think there was another one similar to that. My computer went down. And the Carlisle Indian School Project is, just Google Carlisle Indian School Project. And wait a minute, I do have the website written down. But I believe it is carlisleindianschoolproject.com or .org. We're a nonprofit.
So but people that want to come to the remembrance ceremony should look up the Circle Legacy website, correct?
The events, yes, are Circle Legacy Center. It's carlisleindianschoolproject.com. I'm sorry, that's that. And so Circle Legacy is I believe Circle Legacy Center. We've got a brand new website, so I hope everyone will check it out.
They can also
We also have
find us.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, but they can also find Kathy, Lizard, me, and we can give them the information as well.
Okay.
So Sandy, I want to say thank you. We have to close the show now. It was really awesome meeting you and having you call in. You're gonna do this. And again, all the information that you just said, you know, shocked me as well as my viewers, I'm sure. And on that note, I want to say thank you, and I'm going to have Kathy read about what she brought in on this flyer for everyone. Thank you, Sandy.
Okay. Okay. It is, excuse me, real quick, circlelegacycenter.org.
Great.
See you soon, Sandy.
Okay.
Thanks, bye. So one of the things we do and why we're here is we just like to raise awareness of Native American culture and things we can do to help. So on Saturday, April 21st, we have an artist coming to town by the name of Charlie Zom. He's popular in Pennsylvania and he's popular in New Jersey. And we have a concert that's going to be held on the 21st in Levittown. And you can actually see all the information at charliezon.com. And portions of the proceeds from this concert will be donated to raise awareness for Native American causes. We are trying to bring an interpretive dance about the black snake, and it's all about Standing Rock, to the local area, and it's a phenomenal production that we saw in New York. So we're asking people to come out and support this concert. It's an amazing night of folk music from the 60s, including John Denver, Pete Seeger, Peter, Paul, and Mary.
That's great.
It's just a great time. We have he just rocks the house, and he's got this great fiddler that he brings with him, Tad Marks and Steve Hobson on guitar. So it's charliezom.com. Just come out and support us on the 21st of April, 7:30 p.m. I almost said September.
So, guys, I'll also have this with me. So if you guys want information, you know, we have it here. Get in touch with me on Facebook. So, guys, I want to say thank you to both of you. You know, it's always a pleasure having you on, first and foremost, because now I really love you guys. But second, because of all the work that you guys do and the awareness you bring. And, you know, I'm going to say what I want to say, okay? I just have to say something here. And I have to say this, okay? Anyone who knows me, my granddaughter's part African-American. Lizard's granddaughter is, right?
Black.
So black. I mean, I have everything inside of me I found out through the DNA. I'm also part Jewish, guys, okay? Italian. So I'm everything. So it's fine. What I'm not, though, is Native American. And I was a little upset about that. I was hoping to have a little tiny bit of it, okay? And I don't, okay? But I do have a heart for them. And I'm going to say this and take it at, you know, anyone out there who knows me knows I don't say anything to hurt anybody. I don't judge anybody. But, you know, all these movements today, everybody wants to be heard. And you should be heard. But to me, this is one of the most profound movements because it's still going on, guys. This is still happening today, and that's what's heartbreaking for me.
Standing Rock was total proof of that.
Okay, so that's why to me this is such a powerful cause. So I'm hoping you guys will come out to this concert. I'll be posting about it as well. And on that note, guys, ciao.